Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my shop. This time we're going to be surfacing some workbench tops. So if you aren't aware, I have been producing and selling a no lamination workbench kit. So unlike my workbench, which is made up of a bunch of strips glued together, this would allow people to make a workbench out of one solid piece of wood, which saves a bunch of time and I think looks a lot better, you know, in the end, if I have to say so myself, looking at these two. So a little bit of a story here. So the customer who ordered these asked if I was going to be offering a surfacing as like an add-on service. I told him I wasn't really planning on doing that, but you know, for the sake of exploration, let's say, I agreed to do it just to see, you know, what it actually takes to surface these things in my shop. I had done this before when I glued up my workbench slabs. I had to surface them. So I kind of had an idea, but it's been like, what, 6 years since I did that? And now I'm in this different shop, so this is going to be like an exploration of, is it worth it to be able to do this as a service on top of sending these out to people? So that's what we're going to sort of explore today. But first, let's hop back in time a little bit to last fall. We're going to take a look at these exact slabs coming out of the log that I cut them out of before I took them to be dried. So that's how it goes, I guess. This is log number 3, or the third log that I sawed, and this is the third bench top from it. The fourth one's not going to happen, so number 3, log 3 produced 3 tops. Log 4, officially nothing. That's how this goes. You know, just for fun, let's get some water going so people can see what their future benches are going to look like. There's a very good chance that the person who bought these slabs, or will end up with these slabs, is watching this video. So if you want to see that whole video, that is part 2 of the producing the first batch of workbench kits. Both of these slabs came from the third log that I cut as part of that batch. This is slab number 2 and slab number 3 from that log. So let's get into turning some rough timber things into workbench tops that are almost ready to go. This customer is building a replica of the workbench that Andy Klein built for Adam Savage from the first few bench tops that I produced. The bench is 5 feet long to fit into smaller spaces. So the first step for me is to chop these 8-footers down. I'm cutting them roughly to 66 inches, 5'6" with a beam saw. That takes these slabs down from about 140 pounds to about 100 pounds. The first step for surfacing is going to be to joint one face flat. These are 13 and some change inches wide, wider than my 12-inch jointer, so just as I would with anything else that is too wide for my jointer, I'll cut a wide rabbet and use the planer to finish the flattening. My jointer has a rabbeting ledge which won't allow for multiple passes unless I manually flush up the area that does not get cut by the cutter head. So I aim for a pretty heavy cut. This cut is a bit over 3/16 of an inch deep. And here's a look at the 12-inch wide rabbet that is flat and will become the reference surface. This one falls off a bit towards the end, but it's not a huge deal since this area will be cut away when the slab is cut to final length. Now on to the second slab. This one has a bit of twist in it, so here's a trick that I use to help stabilize a twisted board. I'll put a shim under the board to hold it midway through the twist. This keeps it from rocking as it goes through the jointer and results in less material that needs to be removed to establish a flat area versus just holding down one end all the way down. I'll usually use a scrap piece of wood or a wood chip or a piece of bark or something off the floor, but in this case all I had was a piece of cardboard. Now I can install my planer platform into the planer. It's a 12-inch wide piece of melamine with a stop on the bottom which catches on the table so it can't be pulled through. I'll run the slabs through the planer, guiding the rabbited area on top of the platform as it goes through the planer. Here's a look at both slabs once they're good enough to flip. Now I can pull the platform and plane the previously jointed face. Since my platform is 3/4 of an inch thick, I can turn the planer handle 12 times to be at a cut depth, which will remove the excess material. From here, it's just a matter of working both faces until they are both cleaned up on both slabs. The final thickness on these ended up at 5 3/8 of an inch thick. Now I can go back to the jointer and square up one edge. The nice thing about these slabs being so thick is that once the edge is cut square, every needed subsequent pass doesn't need the fence since these things are going to rock around as they go through. I only need to focus on the fence for that first cut. All right, so here's a quick look at the slabs as they are now. They are not to final width yet. I'm waiting to hear from the customer what they actually want for the final width. It looks like I can very easily get 12.5. That's up to right here. And that would also remove this kind of knot thing right here. But while I'm waiting, I'm gonna go ahead and flip these things over and do some epoxy fills on the underside. So on this one we have this old limb knot thing going on here, which we'll throw some epoxy in. It's going to be coming out to this knot here on the side. So I'll put some tape over there to dam up that area. And then on this guy we have this bark inclusion, which is, it's fine, it's totally stable. I don't expect this to be a structural issue since this dried without any issues at all. So the epoxy is just going to basically lock in the bark so it doesn't fall out. And if this gets trimmed down to, a little bit shorter length, the epoxy is going to give a little bit of, it's just going to fill in the end. So if there is any exposure of this bark inclusion in the end of the slab, it's just going to be filled a little bit, be more of a visual thing. So these fills are just going to be a simple clear fill. So I'm using Total Boat's high performance epoxy. It's going to be a more clear and less amber look than the 5-to-1, which you've seen me use, in the past. So this is going to give us some really nice clarity. So this is a 2-to-1 product, so fairly easy to mix in mixing cup. And I think I'll probably just mix up, what is that, like 6 ounces? Yeah, let's just do that and see where it takes us. And again, this is more of a visual thing on this and not so much of a necessary structural thing.
All right, so while that's chilling for a second, I'm going to throw some sheathing tape over this knot to dam this up, and we can get to pouring. So on both of these, because they're intended to be the underside of the workbench, I don't really care if this is totally filled in the end. This is going to be probably the inside face, so where the other slab butts up against. Again, you'll never see this either, but you know there is some chance that you'll see this little knot here. So hopefully we can get some epoxy down into here and fill this knot hole, but it's not really a huge deal. Again, just more of a visual thing, just to make it, you know, a little bit nicer. I will say though, there is some really nice grain and figure around this knot. All right, let's get some epoxy down into this bar conclusion. This thing is pretty sweet looking. Now another thing I'll note too is that normally I would epoxy fill these before I surface them, but in this case I wasn't sure how much material to actually be removing as part of the surfacing, so I just went ahead and did the surfacing, and we'll have to just sand this flush later on once it's cured, versus just filling it first and then having it all cleaned up as part of the surfacing process, which is what I would normally prefer, because that'd be done already. I'm all about saving steps. I also thought this bar conclusion actually ran deeper than it does, but it's actually not that far down here. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch thick, if that. So pretty thin, and you can see it kind of runs out onto the surface here. So there really isn't a whole lot of void, so to speak, here. Very cool. So the epoxy has cured, and you can see this is some pretty nice clear stuff you can see down into that void, and it's kind of nice. Again, it's not really like needed for this, because this is intended to be the underside, but I don't know, still looks pretty darn cool. So the planer is still set from last time, so I'm just going to give it a little tiny crank, give this side a skim pass to get all that epoxy cleaned up, and then we can take care of cutting these things down to their final width. To rip these to width, I'm going to use a table saw in 2 passes. If you've ever tried this, you'll know that it's a guarantee that these cuts will not line up perfectly, so I'm introducing a bit of error to remedy that. I have the blade tipped just a bit to create a concavity down the middle of the edge. This will get the mismatched area out of the way and allow the outside edges to be the reference surface for a cleanup pass at the jointer. This ensures that I will remove a consistent amount of material down the entire length, keeping the edge square and parallel to the other edge. So these are going to make a pretty awesome workbench. Just looking at them, I'm like, this is the way to do it. So these will be heading off to the customer probably tomorrow. I'll get them palletized and shipped off, and he can put them together with the base he already has, and he'll have a sweet workbench. And all he has to do is install some vices on there, and boom, super sweet, awesome, shorty workbench. So one of the beautiful things about the split top Roubo design is that it really lends itself to being able to be surfaced and produced with a lunchbox planer, because the slabs, at least on mine, are 11 inches wide finished. So those will fit through any lunchbox planer. So really, if you have a jointer, you can do the hangover method that I did with these and get your 6 or 8 inch wide cut or whatever width jointer you have, and use a sled thread planer to get your first reference cut. You can also go a little more old school with a straight edge and a pair of winding sticks and get a flat or flat enough reference to go through the planer to start, and then do all your surfacing with that. So with those winding sticks and a straight edge, you can either flatten with a hand plane, you can use a handheld power planer, or you can even use a belt sander.
The idea with that first step is just to establish a relatively flat thing, then you can go through that planer and you can do all your milling that way. Now, the big question, am I going to offer this as an add-on service? Probably not. My shop is not set up for millwork. It's set up for furniture making, so this was not really all that efficient or conducive. So at least with this current setup, it's not something I am super interested in doing, but it's nice to have like an idea of what it actually takes to do this. Just for reference, everything you saw as part of the milling process was about an hour and a half worth of work, and it was interesting. I could probably do these just fine, but if I had to do like an 8-footer, it probably would not be even feasible to do in this shop without like taking the milling machines outside, which I don't really feel like doing. So there's the answer to the big question, I guess. So that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on, I guess, workbench stuff, I guess, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy working.